Welcome. This podcast is an exploration into being human and what's possible when there's less attention on the noise in our heads. Warning. While listening to this broadcast, you may experience moments of deep peace, sighs of relief, personal insights, or long stretches of dead air. Do not be afraid. This is normal. Under the Noise with Wyn Morgan and Kate Roberts.
Welcome to Under the Noise. I'm Kate Roberts, and I'm here with my co-host, Wyn Morgan. Hi, Wyn.
Hello.
So today you and I were just chatting, and only for a couple of minutes, about anything that was fresh for us right now, currently. And the only thing that showed up was a question that I've been sitting in around integrity. And so you and I decided it might be fun to explore integrity and possibly the different ways that it's interpreted. And you had a thought, and I thought you might want to share that.
Well, you asked me, what do you think integrity is? And I said some stuff and I went, yeah, that doesn't feel fresh to me. That's an exam question. That was my best question from maybe 10 years ago, or my best answer to the question from 10 years ago. But I don't know right now. So I thought it's always interesting that you and I explore live in real time what we see fresh about something in the way that we did last week and the way that we've done a number of times in the previous 50 odd episodes. What integrity means. Because I remember it being very clear that integrity was different from honesty to me. And I said to you before we started, I had a kind of an off-the-cuff definition, but I don't know. That doesn't feel fresh, so I would love to explore that with you now. And when you said that you were sitting in integrity, or the question of integrity, what's been coming up, if you're able to share?
There's something about, and I've been, just reading different things that seem really interesting, but also noticing what feels true for me. And when I think of integrity right now, it feels like it has a lot to do with reality. So instead of it being more about kind of like being honest with people, or even kind of honest with myself, it feels a little bit like integrity means being in reality. And I find that for me, I've noticed how little I'm doing that, or maybe that I have been in reality in the past. And so every time I'm in my head and I'm in my thoughts, and say, just as an example, you shouldn't be like that. I'm not in integrity anymore. Because let's say, for an example, that's the thing I'm hearing, that's the thought I'm hearing, is he shouldn't do that, or he shouldn't be that way. He actually is that way. And I've just lost my reality because I'm in my head about my shoulds, And I'm not sitting in reality where that's actually the way that it's happening in reality. So I'm not there in reality. I'm up in here about all my ideas and all my thoughts about shoulds or shouldn'ts or all of that. And that's just an example of when I'm in my story about something. And when I'm in my story, I'm usually not here in reality and what's happening in front of me. And usually, actually, I'll give you a real example. This morning, and trust me, this isn't the first or the last time this is going to happen, but my daughter's bus did not show up to pick her up for school. So I start getting these texts from her about how it hasn't gotten there yet. And of course, I'm taking my time, my quiet time that I wake up for, that I love so much. And of course, I know it's it's over now because I have to take her to school. Now I can, and I've done this plenty of times in the past. I'm like, and I'm all up in my head, and it shouldn't be this way. And I didn't get a text, and they should communicate better. And why can't her bus driver be there on time? And why is she sitting at, you know what I mean? So now I'm in my story about how it shouldn't be that way. Mm. And the thing is, in reality, that's what's happening. That's the reality. I don't necessarily have to have a judgment about whether it's right or wrong because my judgment's back in my story. But if I would just sat in reality, and I told her as much, that that's what showed up for me. We had these kind of talks. And now I'm in reality in an honest way for me that's like, okay, well, this is what's happening. And now I get up and I go get ready and I enjoy the extra time that I have with my daughter on the way to school. Because I wasn't in my story about it. I was in it, present. Not pushing up against it in some way.
For anyone concerned, by the way.
What?
For anyone concerned, by the way, Kate's daughter's not 5 years old. Okay? Just in case you're starting to wonder and get, child services.
Probably old enough to walk to school at this point.
Old enough to walk to school, yes, absolutely. Well into her teens, right? So before you start being concerned over that. It's a really cool example. So in that instance then, where does the word integrity fit into that? Just so I understand your meaning of the word.
That's the thing with just different things that I've been reading, is this kind of interchangeable being in integrity is equivalent to reality. It's only like one person's or a couple people's viewpoint on what that word integrity means. And like you said, it's going to mean something completely different to someone else. And so I thought it was an interesting question to kind of sit in, as far as it does feel like integrity could be in reality. Not to judge it, but just to look at it and, and see it. And most of the time, I feel like I've spent it more like in my head and my version, my story of reality, rather than actually just be in it without judging it. And so I just thought it was an interesting topic, integrity, meaning to be in reality in an honest way, rather than in our heads and our stories about it.
So in listening to you, there's an example that just came to my mind, okay? And it's in a conversation with somebody last week. And I was talking with someone last week, and there were some people hunting ducks just off this person's land. And they were saying to me that they've been really annoyed by it. And not just annoyed by the noise, but the whole notion, and this person's vegan, and the whole notion of shooting an animal seemed abhorrent to them. And I was thinking, well, yeah, I don't like that idea either. And yet I eat duck. So I'm totally inconsistent with that, right? That's not a consistent viewpoint. Because in one way, I mean, if you could say that if someone is hunting a duck and then they're eating them, they've probably got more integrity than me. It's one way of looking at it. Because I'm just there kind of like getting it from the grocery store or the Chinese restaurant, and not living with the truth of the process of an animal having died to be on my table, to be on my plate. So in that example, I feel no integrity whatsoever. That I will judge somebody hunting ducks, but not judge me eating them. And I've got lots of examples like that. I've noticed them about me, of where my story says this thing about something, such as, right? So an interesting example, and I find this very curious about me. I don't like fireworks that make a noise. I don't like the bangs. I've seen what it does to pets, the dogs that I've had, and they are terrified. And for that reason alone, I think they're a bad idea. So in my mind, right, Wyn Morgan would say we should ban fireworks. Other than that, specific festivals, and they should only ever be licensed events for the public. No one ever should have private fireworks that are above a certain decibel, and I would make that really low. That would be my very, some would say, draconian view on it. And at the same time, when it comes to something like, just bear with me on this, anyone listening, okay, on this. I don't agree with having a mandate for the vaccine for COVID. I don't agree with have it been enforced. Now, personally, I have been double jabbed and boosted, but I am against that being mandatory, totally. So here I am on one hand, ban fireworks. And here on the other hand, oh no, freedom. Here I am on one hand saying, don't shoot ducks. And here I am on the other hand, eat them. So I'm a total, I don't know what the word would be. I might go as far as to say I'd be a Philistine, right? About how variable my views are on certain things. But I don't think I'm unusual in that regard. I have my inconsistencies. But I don't know if that makes me having no integrity. I don't know if that's true. I don't, because I see my preferences in those two examples where I have very different views on things, of the three examples really. I see it's my personal story that I've made up as a preference. I see that. And I see how different other people's versions of the same thing is, such as duck hunting, eating meat, fireworks, and vaccines. I don't know. I kind of, as I'm exploring this out with you, I think it's just an opinion I have. And what I like about me seeing that it's an opinion and how inconsistent I am in lots of things that are contrary to each other, I notice that other people are that way too, so I'm in no place to judge someone's way of living when I have zero consistency in my own. Zero consistency might be a little bit over the top, but you get my drift. I'm living in my own story-created reality of how to live my own life.
So in your mind, integrity is consistency?
is
Consistency?
no. No, because in my mind, and this is something else I talked about with somebody recently, they had it in their mind that they wanted to be very consistent, and it was pointed out by a dear friend of theirs, the more consistent you are, the more opportunity there is for you to lie.
Explain that.
Well, consistency regarding our emotions, there isn't any. We're inconsistent in our emotions. We are inconsistent in our moods. We're inconsistent in our points of view on things. In the same way as I pointed out as my inconsistencies regarding meat, vaccines, fireworks, lots of other things that I'm very inconsistent about. But I think I'm honest about them. Now, if I was to be consistent, then the only way I'd be consistent about the whole notion of duck hunting would be for me to be vegan or even Jainism. That would make me very consistent. That may be the ultimate integrity, but who's to say? I've made that up too. So going back to what you said about reality and in the story in our heads, all of that is in my head. I don't think. No, I'm not gonna finish that sentence because it was going to be a bit of BS. It wasn't going to be true. I think it's difficult to be that consistent about everything. I think it's difficult. But I don't think that means I don't have integrity. Because I'm human, fallible, going to have things that look real to me that aren't. Going to have opinions to me that don't look like opinions. They look like fundamental truths. Going to think I'm right when I've no idea. Anyway, kind of a meander right now. And what's just come to my mind now is what I've heard somebody else say is integrity is what you do when you know no one's watching. But I don't know if that's true either, as it comes out of my mouth. And I can very easily get heady about defining words, as anyone can. Even look into the dictionary I've got on my desk here. Yet, the reason I think that just popped up into my head was when I'm quiet inside and I'm not listening to the noise of insecurity and my shoulds and my judgments of myself and other people and of how life needs to be, whether it's a bus driver, whether it's how somebody else goes about living their life. When I'm quiet on the inside, there's a voice that kind of is undeniable to me anyway, the more I've noticed it. And the more I listen to that, and the more I'm able to hear it, to me that feels like living with integrity, which I don't think is dissimilar to what you were saying, just using slightly different words.
like me go with that definition of integrity as far as being in reality. It has a different feel to it than being up in my story about whatever is happening in the moment. It has a feeling of presence about it. Like just being in life rather than my story about life, my judgments about life, or the people or circumstances. Feels like feels like peace when I can be in the moment and in reality without a story about it and without a judgment. Even if it's not something that would have been my preference. Story often is pushing up against the way things are, resisting how things are. Be in reality and not judge it. I know what to do. It's peaceful when I do it. I know when not to do something. To let it settle. So yeah, with that definition, integrity feels very peaceful to me.
Hmm. Hmm. I love what you've just said. But integrity feeling peaceful as opposed to something to strive for. Because something to strive for would be another example of story, not what is. And I know that every time I get into my head with anything, it is one of the best ways possible I know of me getting into my head is me making a judgment on the difference between how things are versus how I think they should be. And it's so pervasive. So easily, it just slips in. That I think everything should be the way that I think it should be, as opposed to how things are. And the bigger the gap, the bigger the gap, the more resistance I have to what is. And that's when I'm really into my story and away from the reality, as you're saying it, which does not feel peaceful. And then my actions are going to be interesting if I believe what I think, and if I act on those feelings. then my actions might well follow suit. It's really interesting, isn't it? To just take a look at this. I can see you pondering, Kate. What else is coming to mind?
I was thinking that for the people listening to this, how many varied stories and definitions of integrity there probably are out there. And you and I have only hit maybe one or two about what integrity means to us. And I love that we give meaning. You know, we all have our own meanings for everything. And so I was thinking that I bet we'll get a couple of emails from listeners about their version of integrity and what that looks like to them. And I love that because we're all just making it up, you know, anyway.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you've got a view, please let us know. And know that this isn't about having the right definition or the right explanation. It's exploring what this means. And of course, as humans, what we are is meaning maker-uppers. We just make up meanings to things to help us make a bit of sense. And yet what we're both, I think, Kate, what you're pointing at, I know, and what I'm attempting to point at is before the meaning, before the form of the meaning. With even the absence of meaning, just the sense of what it is to be in what is, as opposed to what we think.
Wow. No matter what the topic, around which we pat and meander, as you said. Whenever we drop out of our personal thinking, it all seems to lead back to the same place. Peace is the common thread. That space.
Thank you, Kate. It's been fun to explore. And again, for you listening, if you've got anything that you heard, questions that you'd like to ask, or your own version of what integrity means to you, please get in touch. Contact details for Kate and myself are at the end of this audio and in the details below if you're on YouTube, and also in the details and any of the platforms that you're getting your podcast from. Thanks for listening to this week's Under the Noise with Kate Roberts and myself, Wyn Morgan. And we look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Have a good week. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have a topic or question that you'd like us to chat about, email Wyn or Kate at wyn@winning.co.uk and Kate at katerobertscoaching.com. Until then, Enjoy what's possible under the noise.